For LG, how many products are out there in the world? Is there any point in changing the logo? Actually, no.
How did the chance to work with LG first come about?
We were kind of pleasantly surprised, let's say.
You went in with One Direction.
One Direction.
The whole thing with presenting One Direction is because we really believed in the work.
Sometimes the answer's hiding in plain sight. It's about bringing it to life.
We flew out to South Korea. We had 16 presentations lined up throughout the week. The first one on the Monday morning was to the CEO in the boardroom.
Did you have at least the temptation to just blow their minds with some new logo and some wild color?
I only actually found this out recently, but yeah, so I was thinking about this last night, actually, that the first interaction I think I had with LG was in my first ever design job as a moving in present. The company bought me a TV and it was an LG TV. And so I think I've probably subconsciously been designing this brand for the last 10, 15 years. Remember looking down at the TV, seeing this little kind of winking, smiling face, having so much personality, and thinking that there was so much potential in there waiting to come out. It just needed to be brought to life. So yeah, first time I came across LG.
Love it. What about you, David?
Yeah, no, I'd never owned an LG product, but it's the sort of thing that in the UK, LG is so famous in our market for OLED TVs and for being in so many pubs around the nation. When you're watching football, like I do a lot, watching your beloved Tottenham Hotspur, whose captain, Son Heung-min, is actually Korean as well. It's a wonderful little reminder that life's good every time you watch a goal go in. So yeah, hadn't owned an LG product, but certainly felt the optimism from afar.
I love it. David, the irony is my LG product at home is a TV that was unfortunately smashed by my 10-year-old as he kicked a soccer ball into the TV. And he was like, "Dad, I accidentally kicked the ball and the ball ricocheted and bounced and hit the TV." Yeah. And I'm like, I've been there, man. That was a direct strike. You top of your laces directly into the screen. There's no way you're doing that much damage with a soft little bounce.
Yeah, back of the net. Sign him up.
I love it. I feel like so many people have a personal story about LG. Now, from a brand perspective, what was your perception of LG as a brand before you began work on this project? How did you see it as a brand?
I think from my end, LG was one of those brands that actually, like many other international electronics brands, it just had a sense of quality. It's quality products, but so many products in this type of category, whether you call it white goods or, consumer electronics, they have no personality. And LG is one where it has that little bit of extra optimism to make it, to set it apart. But really this category as a whole is one where it's lots of hardware, cold metal, utilities that are stuck behind kitchen doors, hidden away in your house. And it's one of many brands, whether you're looking at Sony, Samsung, Bosch, Miele, like all of these brands are kind of difficult to love because they're hidden around the home, or they're, you deliberately want to focus on the content and not on the hardware.
I love that. Yeah, you don't think in terms of brand love or product love with something like that, but it's very true, right? It can be very true.
Yes, I think my perception outside of work was that, they felt very traditional. They felt kind of really trusted. It felt like you're going to, buy a great quality product. And I mentioned the little logo. I think as a designer, always kind of looked at it and kind of saw that there's an opportunity for so much more. Seeing the smile, but also seeing life's good, it kind of had this, restricted feeling that there was all this personality, but it was just waiting to come out. So as a designer, we were really excited to start to work with them and kind of shift them from feeling maybe a bit kind of shiny and a bit cold, like what you might expect for the category, into something that could just be full of personality, full of warmth, full of character. And so their potential was kind of really matched with what we were going to create.
How did this work come about? An email out of the blue. Talk us through what that was like and what that felt like.
Yeah, it felt great. It really did come out the blue that LG got in contact with us, and it was because one of their designers in their design center knew our name, knew of our work. LG employ thousands of designers in product design, industrial design, software design. So we were fortunate, that having, as a company, having worked in South Korea before, we were on people's personal radar. But we at the time didn't have any, personal connections within LG, and they reached out to us just on the strength of our reputation. And they kind of sent us a cold email in terms, unsolicited, but a very warm email in terms of like, we love you guys. We'd really want you to pitch to take on a brief from us. And so we jumped at the chance because, we know what a big, impressive company LG are, and we absolutely love working in South Korea. So we were kind of pleasantly surprised, let's say, to hear the call. But I think the most surprising thing was that they were so open with the actual brief, that they were really ready to refresh, rejuvenate, rethink it all. And so, that was actually more shocking than getting the call out of the blue.
Yeah. Tom, any builds to that? I bet you had to take some calculated but bold risks with that ask.
I think when it came to our first presentation, we wanted to go back to them. Naturally, you can, do through 3 different routes, 3 different concepts. And we actually felt, talking as a team, we had a really clear vision of what we felt like the future of LG could be. So rather than going in different directions, we actually went all in, where we wanted to share one vision of what the future of the brand could be. And the way that we thought about that was actually looking at one of the recent CEO speeches. And out of that speech, we pulled out 7 big questions that he's raised for the business and for the brand. And so we actually showed the work by answering those big questions that CEO had raised. And I think that's why, it resonated, because it felt like those were real challenges that the brand was facing. So we went all in. And the great thing about not doing 3 directions and doing one is that we could just go super deep, super experimental in one area and not kind of spread ourselves too thinly.
Yeah. Bold and confident and maybe slightly terrifying. Or how did you feel? One direction. They're either going to love it or they're not going to love it.
Yeah, I think we felt confident because there were so many amazing elements to the brands that we could build off. So we weren't just throwing everything out and just starting completely from scratch. We wanted to build on the heritage and the history of the company, really focus on some of the most wonderful parts that they already had in the identity, but then just bring it to life in new, exciting, fresh ways. So yeah, it was bold to go with one, but also it was kind of low risk because we kind of saw a really clear vision and we wanted to, do that with conviction and show how it was going to answer some of their real world problems.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about any unique parameters that you had to be mindful of. You wanted to keep that history and heritage. There were so many good elements that you could build on and really build out. But were there any unusual parameters that you had to be mindful of with the LG brand? Anything untouchable?
Yeah, I could kick off on a bit of the backstory. You were asking about the kind of timeline of the project. I think it was really interesting for us because when they got in contact, I think the context was quite interesting, where LG had a new CEO in place for around 2 years. And prior to that, they'd exited the smartphone market. And we were waiting to find out what the new kind of business strategy and new direction for the business as a whole was. And as Tom mentioned, the CEO then kind of made a big public speech, showed off their new ambition, spoke about their desire to move into B2B services as well as B2C, because they're obviously a massively famous consumer electronics company, but they've got huge amounts of potential in, in-car entertainment solutions, corporate solutions, even working in the worlds of healthcare and beyond, and taking the brand out to all kinds of partners. And recently they announced a big partnership with Meta, and they got various entertainment partnerships. And so I think instead of this feeling of kind of loss and, oh no, we're exiting certain markets, it was suddenly a very exciting moment where they really wanted to accelerate, grow, expand the business. And, we talk about, because they have this life's good story, we talked about being more of a lifestyle brand and also working for every side of life. I think in design terms, that kind of became another massive challenge, because you're not only looking at a company with tons of different products, everything from air purifiers to TV sets to fridges to gaming monitors. You're also looking at like every side of life: work, play, dancing, singing, listening to music, everything. And so we kind of, as we got into the discussions, we were like, what kind of brief is this? Is this like a rebrand? That would feel strange, and like we're throwing everything out. They've got, as Tom's already mentioned, they've got an iconic logo, slogan, so much to play with. So we started to talk to each other and to them about more of a brand rejuvenation, because this was a brand that needed to feel younger, fresher, more digital, more alive, with more personality, rather than feeling like we're changing everything and throwing everything out. So that kind of idea of brand rejuvenation was a good start point for us. And then also it was like, who are we speaking to here? We're speaking to people who, especially in younger generations, are maybe thinking, this is a lot of high ticket, high price items that these companies sell, like things like TVs, washing machines. Maybe you don't buy these sort of things until you move into your first home, or even later, depending on your circumstances. So to make this brand feel accessible and exciting for a younger generation, and not just the choice of, mums, dads, grandpas, grandmas, was a big deal. So that's why, we were so keen to make it feel more youthful, more energetic, more alive.
Yeah. Tom, anything to add to that? Anything that you're like, wow, I don't think we can touch that, or...
There was nothing specified that we couldn't, but okay. I think also we wanted to be really respectful and really do the right thing for the brand. And I think changing things just for the sake of it felt really unnecessary. You think about how many thousands of products are out there in the world. Is there any point really changing the logo? Actually, no, but you can change everything else around it. And that was our kind of approach. So do what's right for the business and for the client, and don't just change it just because you want to, just because the graphic designer in you wants to, correct a bit of kerning or change the typeface a little bit. It didn't feel like that was needed.
Nice.
We actually had a conversation early on about, as in myself and Tom had a conversation early on about the phrase "life's good," because I was like, it's one of those things that has been around for so long that's kind of a pun, as in it's the LG "life's good." And it was actually originally invented for, I think it was an Australian advertising campaign. Like it was something that kind of came into being through some commercials, and then kind of stuck, and it's just hung around over the years and become part of the brand, but wasn't ever really kind of addressed as like, what does this mean, or what could it be? And so I always was a bit like, is it a bit too sweet, saccharine, cheesy? Like the life's good thing is a bit throwaway. And we were like, we've got to go for this. And Tom did a really good presentation over in Korea where it's like, this is life's good. It's not life's great. It's not kind of, we're not going over the top with it, but we've got to give meaning to this idea of life's good, and it can be really good. And that sense of optimism, simplicity, charm, something we sort of agreed we really needed and wanted to elevate.
I love that take, because it's not grandiose or over-promising. It's just, living life every day and making it as good as possible, right? So that seems very on brand.
Yeah.
Now, after you got the brief, where did you first start? Like, think about research, and, LG permeates so many segments in the market that you talked about earlier. What research was involved, net new versus maybe what they already had? How did you get started?
Yeah, I mean, as a strategist, obviously, I'm supposed to revel in doing lots of research, but we didn't really do much. No. The funny thing with LG was they are, because they're a massive company in multiple segments, multiple markets, they had so much research, and that's into products, into consumers, to trends, innovations. I think us trying to bring new research at that stage of briefing would have been a bit naive, actually, speaking honestly. It much more important for us to analyze the insight they had, to understand the speed and levels that the brand was playing at in different markets. By that I mean, in the US, our understanding is it's actually quite a premium innovative and high ticket item brand. In Asia, it's a premium brand, but in certain product categories. Whereas in Europe, we have this thing of like there's so many competitors, German, Swedish, British, all the rest of it, as well as a whole host of American and Asian brands. It's like there's a bit of a kind of price-led competition in the European market. So trying to understand all the levels and speeds and categories the brand's playing at. But really, at the end of the day, I think, we identified that what is going to set a brand like this apart, it's not going to be like a USP or a proposition, really, as in the products they have millions of USPs. There's millions of technical aspects that we could try and win on. But the brand just needed to a massive injection of personality and energy and vibrancy, because this is a category that simply doesn't have that. I think that's really the kind of the start point, was this like personality and philosophy behind the brand that we really wanted to get moving.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Tom, any builds on that?
Well, David mentioned philosophy, and I think that was one of the key moments for us as we were talking internally. We wanted to think about how could we do something that was right for LG, but we also wanted to think about how we could do something different in this category and really stand out. And as we were talking about electronics and technology, obviously things like artificial intelligence came up. And the more and more we talked about LG's kind of human-focused, people-first approach to creating products, we quite quickly started talking about the role of emotional intelligence within this space. And actually, we kind of loved that emotional intelligence could be the guiding philosophy behind everything that we did. So we created a design philosophy called Emotionally Intelligent Design. And that's where it all started to kind of click, actually, because it informed everything that we designed from the visual identity. But then it also went on to inform the way that some of their internal design teams started to approach things. And we're still using it today as that kind of guiding philosophy. And I think the fact that LG kind of is a design company as well, that having a single philosophy that can go across everything they create, whether that be brand moments, marketing moments, product moments, is really, really powerful. So that's one of the key first things that we did, and worked incredibly well. Yeah.
And it seems so natural hearing you say it, like, oh, of course, emotional intelligence, but it's nice to have that unlock moment. That's pretty great.
One of the other big challenges in terms of flexibility that the brand has is not only all the different audiences they need to talk to, but also all the different moments and experiences they have to design to as well. And that's where emotionally intelligent design also becomes really powerful. So sometimes people are like really curious and they want to be inspired, and we can kind of take them on that journey and show them exciting things. But there's other points in the journey where they just want to know what the specs in the TV are, and they want to add it to their basket, and they want to buy it. So actually, we then use emotional intelligence to cut to the chase, make it super simple, be really, really functional. So it works on multiple levels to really design the best thing for the consumer.
I love that.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. So just to check in on the overall process real quick. So you got the email, you had some calls, you got the brief, you jumped in and started to work on, what's the right approach, either strategically or creatively. Did you engage with the LG team very much in that process? Like, was there a weekly check-in? Was there a daily check-in? All sort of in my mind, I'm leading up to like the first presentation, Tom, which you already sort of alluded to a little bit, but like this first presentation's coming. What was the engagement like with the LG team? Was there a lot of interaction, or was it just you all off to the races trying to best solve the problem?
I think in terms of the early engagement, we were pleasantly surprised that LG brought like a very accelerated, kind of surprisingly uncorporate, unhierarchical approach to this brief. And what I mean by that is, as Tom said, they kind of, in the brief, put everything up for grabs. It wasn't like, please only look at this asset or only look at this element of the strategy. So it was very free. But also in the meetings, they brought, all of their new senior marketing leadership team, several of their design team, and they only left kind of one step between that layer of approval and their CEO, and it was super surprising and refreshing for us, like where we're going from first presentation to CEO presentation in no time at all. And it was wonderful because you build trust super quickly. You get a sense that they want to help design the answer with you very quickly. And also that this is, real, and actually they care about it and want to push it forward radically. And that it's not kind of one of those where you have to do like, okay, I'll get my boss's boss approval on this, and then their boss's boss, and then maybe we'll see if we can get a mandate to change X, Y, and Z in the identity. So it's like, had real rapid momentum. And then after the CEO meeting, it became, like this is happening, and this is happening as quickly as possible. So yeah, real pace and momentum, real kind of anti-corporate, as in, anti-hierarchical, slow process.
That client interaction sounds like a gift.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because for us, it was like, it was surprise. And it's one of those where you have to shake off some of the usual behaviors you have because, you're used to that stage gated approval process and building the rationale up every time for someone's next layer of approval. And instead, we had to be much more careful and thoughtful about like what we're putting forward. This could well go out into the world and quickly be adapted, deployed. So it's like, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with quick releases, building towards a CES in January or an IFA in Berlin in the summer? Like, how do you actually deliver some assets that will help them before the identity's, refined and baked?
So I want to get into the first round a little bit, and I'm really curious about the inspiration for that presentation. Tom, you said you did some research, the team did some research, found a presentation by the CEO, had 7 points that you anchored into, which is brilliant. I would imagine the team has worked really hard on that presentation, that it's, maybe 100 slide deck, kind of a thing. Like there's a lot of energy and effort into it. How did you feel like the night before that big presentation?
We were excited. I think the whole thing with presenting one direction is because we really believed in the work and we really believed in the idea. So when you feel like that, there kind of are no nerves. You're just excited and you want to share with them and you want to make it real and you want to hear what they think about it. Our approach from the first presentation was landing emotionally intelligent design, introducing that to them, and then asking the simple question of what does emotionally intelligent design mean for all the different elements of our brand? So we kind of like broke it down. What does that mean for our symbol? What does it mean for motion? What does it mean for color? What does it mean for typography? And then at the end of the presentation, we started to put that all together. And then we answered those big 7 questions from the CEO. So 100, it was probably more like 200 to be honest, but it was a really kind of step-by-step journey in all of the thinking and the thought that we'd put into it. And I think that made it quite, easy to follow and showed them that how this was actually going to work for them. So yeah, we were excited and luckily they were really excited too.
And was this an in-person meeting or was this a remote?
This was still in COVID time. So it was, virtual. We actually didn't meet them, I think, for maybe the first kind of 6 months when we were able to kind of go and travel over and spend lots of time with them. So it's been an interesting project that the biggest bulk of it was completely virtual. And obviously with the time difference, we're presenting really early in the morning. It's in their afternoon. So lots of the work had been done just through the virtual relationship that we built with them. But by the time we went over to actually spend the time, it felt like we knew them. We were really close. We had such a strong connection. So actually, it was wonderful to share some of the new work we'd done, but also work with them to kind of share it amongst the broader business while we were actually there in person, make the most of that.
Yeah. I don't know if the two of you would agree with this, but one thing that I find most difficult in doing the remote presentations, especially in a big moment like that, where you feel like, okay, this is it. We've put so much energy and effort into it. We've put all of our eggs into this one basket, and you just don't quite get initial feedback. If you're in the room with people, you hear, or you see the head nods, but virtually sometimes you get none of that. And especially in some platforms, you literally can't see, you know, everyone else in the room, and you're just sort of speaking into the void. How was that as you were presenting, and with the cultural differences working with a Korean team? Were there, you know, what was that dynamic like? Were you getting lots of affirmative, you know, head nods, or were people making comments as you went, or was it just like crickets until you had to stop speaking and wait for feedback?
I mean, it's terrible doing these sort of meetings over Zoom, as you well point out. Like any client, I think with these guys, with the LG guys, it was one of those where they're all nodding in agreement. And like I said, like the wonderful thing was that they genuinely did bring lots of people into those first couple of meetings, because they really wanted to share the vision, share the ambition, see, you know, get everyone on board with it. And actually, the fact that there was just kind of like a lot of simple nodding and not lots of feedback was one of those where you're like, you don't need people to be jumping up and down and standing on the desks and, you know, screaming Wolff Olins' name. You want people to be like, yep, this is good, let's do it. And that's exactly the vibe that they gave, which was like a kind of polite, this is good, like, this is the sort of thing we need to do. And you're like, oh, right, this is real now. Okay. That's when the scary part came, not the, you know, as Tom said, I think we believed in what we were presenting. The scary part was when they're like, yep, let's go. And you're like, okay, well, how quickly is this really going to roll out? You know, we can't just give you these assets and you roll. You know? So yeah, I think that became quite daunting, but yeah, wonderfully refreshing. What was an interesting one for us was Tom talked about this creation for them of a design philosophy, design ethos of emotionally intelligent design. And I think that's not something we do with every client, because some clients don't need one because they're not the sort of company where they have the sheer breadth and number of touch points and number of different channels and people to manage where it's necessary. And some people have, you know, like a brand idea or a visual idea or a proposition. You know, there's all these other things that as strategists and designers we like to call things. And so we were like, actually, this brand, both functionally, you know, to guide all the design decisions we need to, but also fitting in with the strategy. They already have Life's Good. They already have a vision to become a smart life solutions provider. They already have, you know, a logo, a visual idea, a color palette, all that kind of stuff. It's more like what is going to guide our design decisions over time. That's why we presented this philosophy. And would they get that was the question we were thinking. And, you know, they really got it so quickly. And it was so clear that for them, that's what they wanted and needed. That was a big relief, rather than having to like explain the idea of philosophies or ethoses. It was something that was adopted super fast.
I only actually found this out recently, but the senior vice president that we were presenting to at the time recently told me that at the time that we presented this work to them, he was actually reading a book about emotionally intelligent leadership. And so I think that's what kind of helped. You know, he was already on board, so we didn't really have to explain it too much. He already, you know, was an expert about emotional intelligence, and yeah,
we hadn't accident to him ahead of time. It wasn't a plant.
Wow, that's a nice little wink.
Yeah,
nice little coincidence. That's helpful. I'm curious too, because I've been in a situation where I have felt this tension. You know, you're going in and you're really wanting to impress the LG team with this big, massive moment, and the brief is pretty open-ended. And sometimes clients are looking for like this creative wow, you know, like, oh, we were going to find that Wolff Olins, this creative agency, they're going to blow our minds. What are they going to do? Like, who knows? And you feel like that's the need you need to satisfy. And yet you went in with one direction that was pretty evolutionary in terms of not really changing the logo. And you just sort of expanded on it. So I'm curious, did you have a thought of like, are we stopping too short with just sort of going down this route? And like, should we try to just blow their minds with some new logo and some wild color, like, did you have at least the temptation of that thought?
Honestly, not really. I think we actually felt like the time was better spent in wowing them with what they can do with all of the amazing things they already had and adding 3 or 4 new things.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, in terms of your question of, like, should we have done, things that are kind of crazy or unexpected? I think right at the start, we were like, this just feels like one where all the answers are hiding in plain sight. Like, you've got this face with a hidden smile that is just static and, just doesn't feel like it has personality, when surely it could move, wink, welcome, be a warm, welcoming face of technology. Like, there were so many things that seemed, like right up and ready with the logo that could just be a new face and work digitally. Then there was Life's Good, where it was like, again, it was just like a hidden throwaway feeling thing where it's like, let's blow that up and make that huge and make that feel elegant and smart and like it's a point of view and it actually has a story behind it, a story of optimism, not cynicism, and all that kind of stuff. But then there were a lot of things that the team did and that Tom did where it was like, whoa, there's going to be a lot of flex here, where it's sometimes going to be black, red, white. You're going to have characters, you're going to have motion. Like, I don't think it's to be underestimated how many assets, like illustration, motion, new form, like there's a lot in the new system where it might not be throwing things out, but like adding so much character and forms of expression. We were like, well, this might scare them off and seem just like overwhelming. So I think that was more risky / something that they could have just thought was just overwhelming.
Yeah that makes a lot of sense. And the type, the characterization of the logo, the animation, motion, I mean there is a lot of newness with it, and it's super smart. And I think the right approach. I was curious if there was just a slight hesitation, but it sounds like there was all confidence, which I love.
I think one of the things that was a big talking point was the team. So when we first got the brief as a team, we were like, I don't know if you know the phrase the Korean wave, which is talked about. Hallyu is the Korean translation. There was actually a Hallyu Korean wave exhibition in London at the Victoria and Albert Museum, the V&A in South Kensington. And as a team, we all went along because we were, intrigued to see what kind of, we all knew about K-pop, K-drama, and, we had a feeling for Korean culture, but, there's so much to be explored. And I think we saw a lot there that was initial inspiration for just how much Koreanness we could adopt. And I think that was an early conversation that was really interesting with LG was, and they rightly pointed out, there's a lot of global companies who've made expanded internationally successfully by not being, a German brand, a Japanese brand, a Swedish brand like Spotify, Adidas, these kinds of brands. They're not like, they don't feel like they're local or parochial. And indeed, there's a worry that they limit themselves by seeming too Korean, too German, too whatever. And I think that's a totally valid point. However, this is a culture and, like I say, a sort of Korean wave that we felt like it's so much excitement globally, so much personality, youthfulness. So when you talk about a brand rejuvenation project, tapping into some of that, surely we felt was like a huge win. So, the guys have got illustrations, the characters have got tattoos, there are, there's dance moves, there's references to things like, dance crazes, where it's like, that could have been a bit of a sticking point, I think, if we'd have made it seem too Korean in too much of an on the nose or like heritagey classic way. And I think, I think the team did an amazing job in getting that balance right and bringing that kind of those nods to Korean culture through without it seeming too local or provincial.
I think the other thing I was going to add is we had to also remember that this is a global brand and that it needs to work in pretty much every country in the world. And I think a bit of the magic was it was not trying to overcomplicate it and try too hard. It was actually to celebrate all the simple, universal ideas. So lots of it is based on the idea that we shared with them right at the start was LG's the company bringing a smile back to tech. We had that as, I think it was the last page in our presentation. We said, imagine in a few years' time, it's on the front of a magazine, LG's the company bringing a smile back to tech. And actually, one of the things I'm most proud of is that's the line that actually went out into the world when the brand launched. And in terms of some of those other really simple, universal ideas, it's things like, we created Life's Good dance moves for all of the characters we created. We shared on social through these little kind of short stories all based on kids' books, through the face, simple things like smiling, winking, nodding, celebrating the kind of optimism and the idea that life's good. They're all such simple, humble ideas that are really gettable. And I think part of the magic was just trying to embrace those simple ideas and not make it kind of try too hard.
I love that. Just to kind of keep going with that thought, Tom, David, what were some of your favorite parts or what did you think was most successful in the actual work itself?
Most successful? I think the three things I kind of have in my head as I'm really proud of or really successful is one is the, bringing through these little nods to Korean culture. So there's things like the finger heart, which are, fast becoming a kind of global mode of expression for young people to signal a little bit of cuteness, fun, charm, just as a, mode of appreciation. And we kind of said, there's an opportunity to kind of own that in people's minds and bring a bit of a smile with things like that. So these little nods, where when you see the identity, you just have these tiny little stories where you dig deeper and you find out something new. I think that's wonderful that you can kind of get that and it still feel global and exciting. I think the second thing is adding some meaning to Life's Good. It was, as I said, I always felt it was a bit of a throwaway, bit of a pun, didn't really have, a story behind it. And I think especially the new CEO and marketing leadership team, they felt that the story that is innate in it, which we ran with, is this kind of relentless optimism, not crazy over the top, the world's a wonderful place and we all need to, see that. It's more every day we go again. We're not cynical. We believe that, products can be better, services can be better, we can be better. And that kind of everyday little bits of optimism, bringing that to life and telling that story, I'm really, really proud of. And then I think third thing is, this emotionally intelligent idea. I think in an era of artificial intelligence, of lots of digital services and servants, and in a category where it's white goods and cold, to be able to do something that isn't so techie and that has, that pays homage to LG's design insight, empathy, the way that they, see what people want and design around it. This is a company that designs we refer to it as the party fridge. They have a fridge called a mood up fridge where it has a light display on the front, and if you're in party mode, it can be disco lights, and if it's calm Sunday evening, it's got a warm glow. It's responding to your moods. It's kind of a crazy invention. And equally, they've got things like an interview fridge. They refer to it as a knock fridge, where it's seemingly weird innovations that you knock on a fridge rather than open the door to reveal what's inside. It goes transparent, and that's actually an energy saving device, so you're not letting the heat in and cold out all the time. And a yeah, and just a fun way to interact with something that would be a really dull product otherwise. Like coming up with those kinds of inventions, it takes a little bit of crazy. And I think us being able to highlight that empathy and insight from them, this emotional intelligence is really cool.
I love that. I feel so disappointed in my refrigerator right now.
Yeah. Sorry.
Jealous. Fridge envy.
Yeah.
Ordering one right now.
Tom, what about for you? I mean, you were in the depths of decision making around, typefaces, color, imagery, motion, I would imagine. As you think about all of the work that you and the team did, what are some of your favorite highlights? Like, what are you personally the most proud of?
I think overall, I'm really proud that we built a brand that didn't feel like you could see this rigid kind of templated system. It wasn't overly guidelined. We, right from the beginning, wanted to create something that was much freer, much more flexible. So guided by our philosophy, we then kind of identified 3 originally, but actually I think 4 in the end, really distinct elements. So logo, red, life's good. And then what got added was the finger heart a little bit later on. Those were the really kind of hero elements that made up the brand, and everything else was just much more free and flexible and kind of underpinned by a design system, but it didn't feel like it was super rigid. It felt like you could be really, really expressive with it. And I mentioned the finger heart. I think that's something that actually came quite late to the mix. We were quite far into the project, and we actually saw in one of their older ad campaigns, they'd used it as a little kind of symbol of loving the product, and was just thinking about the way that it's not very often that a brand can own a gesture or a symbol. I think, years and years ago, Facebook kind of owned the thumbs up, and felt like there was actually a really interesting opportunity that they could own this symbol that anyone can make. And it just has this kind of really humble, life's good spirit to it that felt like it could be something really ownable for the brand. So I'm really proud that we kind of went beyond graphics and we could do something that, is a gesture, and something that can be a celebration of Korean culture as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And we'll get to launch here in just a minute. I'm curious though, if we jump back a little bit, after the first round, there was head nods. They were excited. They said, "Yeah, let's go." Then all of a sudden, you got nervous. How did you kind of move through? I'm imagining at that point you're sort of, refining elements, building to it. Maybe then you start to refine more of the animations of the LG face and the behaviors and the 3D illustrations. I'm sure you're really like getting into the technical depths at that point. How did LG sort of give approvals and start to make decisions? Any comments on like that overall approval process?
So I think once we'd kind of like shared our vision with them, when we did that first presentation where we flew out to South Korea, I think we flew out on a Sunday, and we had, I think, like 16 presentations lined up throughout the week. It was like 4 a day. And the first one on the Monday morning was to the CEO in the boardroom. And so that was the kind of high pressure presentation. And we knew that he was already really excited about the work. And when we shared it with them, he was amazing because hopefully he'd seen that we'd actually answered some of the questions from his speech originally in what we first presented to them. And that did make the entire week a lot more enjoyable. That we had the first presentation on a Monday morning. He really loved it. He had some great builds. And then we got to share it throughout the different business units without the different teams. So then it was more getting people to kind of input and find out what challenges they had for the different parts of their business and really build on it. But definitely getting the CEO presentation out of the way and kind of getting the thumbs up from him was, a great start.
Yeah, that would have it would have been hard to have a challenging meeting right out of the gate, knowing you've got a week filled with those meetings. So getting a win was like, all right, here we go. We got this.
Yeah. The one new thing, again, this kind of came partway through the process, was the typography for Life's Good, going super kind of nerdy graphic design now. That we hadn't actually proposed it in some of our first presentations, but when we went over, we felt like, there was an opportunity to put more meaning into it, but also there was an opportunity to try and break some of the category conventions of sans serif, like traditional typography, and actually showing how we could draw a custom bit of type for Life's Goods that felt really different to anything out there. And also importantly, different to other elements in the brand. So it'd really stand out. So the rest of their typography is all sans serif. So really simple, really accessible, has that kind of nice digital feeling, and it contrasted really well. That was the one thing we needed to kind of get over the line. And yeah, he's bold and brave. So he went for it. And then we could kind of continue to refine from there. And in the following weeks, we've been lucky enough to collaborate with so many different partners through this whole process. So we've continued to develop at every single stage. So for example, with the face animations, we worked with an animator called Marco, who specializes in kind of character animation to make sure we got all the subtle kind of nuances of facial kind of behaviors. We also worked with Young Min, who's a really awesome illustrator, to create the two characters. We continue to kind of partner with other agencies, ad agencies, motion agencies, so that every single element we're kind of working with really specific partners that we want to kind of bring it to life. We were really lucky in that sense. We've got to work with so many different people.
I love that. What about moving towards the launch and the rollout internally first? You know, there's a big design center. I would assume that they needed to be aware of some of this work, or I'm sure there were lots of marketing teams that needed to be aware. What did it look like to just move towards an internal launch? And then I'd love to get a take on, you know, what were the plans for launching externally as well?
Yeah, funnily enough, we've kind of had about three or four different launches of it. I think the interesting thing about LG is that because they're an innovation company, they always want to be moving fast and, you know, bringing new inventions to the world. And actually, we kind of approach the brand in the same way. So fairly early on, it was coming up to January where there's a big tech event in Vegas, CES. And so that's the first time that the CEO actually shared some of our work live on stage, broadcast it to the world. Then later in that year, we had our kind of internal launch. That's where we actually proposed to them that you should really make this a moment and really celebrate it. So we proposed the idea of creating Life's Good Day that could happen every year as a chance to kind of, celebrate the new brand launch, but also just celebrate all the things that make life good. And that was something they really embraced. So they made a Life's Good bus. They traveled all around the country. They held these Life's Good events. They made Life's Good skateboards, surfboards, Life's Good table tennis tables. And so internally, that was a really amazing way to kind of rally everyone behind this idea. And then more recently, again, we had CES this year where we launched new parts of the brand. And obviously there was our case study kind of share. So yeah, there's been 4 or 5 kind of launches as we've gone through, really trying to celebrate that kind of innovation, almost like software company approach of bringing the brand out to the world.
I love that. I love the Life is Good Day.
Small thing on, I was just going to add a small thing on some of those Life's Good Day pieces of merch and collateral. Was we had a really good conversation with them about how to do that, where it's like, you know, so many companies, the minute you've got the new identity, it's like pens, notebooks, stationery, you know, it's like, it's plastic, landfill, a go-go. And it's like, I'm not sure this is saying much for your sustainability credentials. These guys really bought into that idea of like, make it feel like limited edition, really special when we do it, really vibrant, really speak to the idea of life's good, you know, make it things that people want to keep and genuinely use, even if it's for fun. So like, you know, there is a surfboard and there is a ping pong table, but they actually get used rather than just hanging around in someone's garage. So yeah, it was just nice that they really embraced that mindset as well, not just producing things for the sake of it.
Not just plastic tchotchkes.
What did you call it? Pre-landfill merch, yeah.
Pre-landfill. And anytime, I've got 3 kids, 10, 8, 6, and anytime they go to birthday parties, they come back with, which is like a new thing. I don't remember this being as when I was a kid, but you know, the kids get a prize, like a take home, not a prize. They call it like I forget what they call it, but it's like, hey, thanks for coming to the party. Here's like a little gift bag, you know, and there's candies and stuff. But usually it's plastic tchotchkes. And I'm like, I don't want those in our house. That is just pre-landfill plastic that I'm in charge of. And I feel guilty for having all of it. It's either going to be in like the toy boxes in our playroom or in a landfill. So, I would rather not have it.
I had a quick question, a follow-up question about external launch. It sounds like LG were very much on board with making a big splash. And I think that's harder for, now granted they're a gigantic company, but it's hard for a lot of brands to envision how big they should go. And sometimes it takes a lot of discussion and buy-in between agency and client. Did they just know, or was it conversations like, did it start out like, oh, we'll do some of these? It sounds like they were ready to go, right? With not a lot of convincing.
I think they loved the idea of Life's Good Day. And I think that's something the CEO kind of really resonated with as well. And so we put forward loads of ideas that you could do, really simple, small social things right through to big anamorphic billboards, which we ended up doing in New York. I think when some of the ideas were shared, they really got drawn to the biggest ideas, and the CEO is like pushing us, let's go bigger. Whereas that's not always the case. Sometimes it's, scale back. What's the budget? But actually they really wanted to go for it and engage all of their teams across the world and make sure that everybody felt part of it. And it didn't just feel like a centralized piece. So Life's Good Day being such a simple idea just becomes the kind of wrapper to bring to life the brand in all of the different ways that you kind of saw out in the market.
I think also there was never really a question of launching with some kind of long tortured narrative, or really kind of big, overdone manifesto. I think that's a big part of the charm and the appeal of, the identity and the story. It's just, you're trying to do what Tom was talking about, like bring a smile back to tech, do that in a charming way, make it feel youthful, and just celebrate this idea of life's good. And it, people know what LG do and, what kind of products they provide. It's just making sure that they can really feel the brand and feel that at scale rather than lots of small little piecemeal activities. So I think just kind of turning up bold, simple, charming ways with scale was made it quite a simple brief for launch.
Oh, that's great. Very refreshing.
Tracy, I've got one more question that I want to try to capture before we get into some takeaways. So, when a big project like this launches, even in the waves, it sometimes gets blowback. Like the social media landscape loves brand changes these days. This one's a little different because oftentimes the blowback comes around like a core identifier, like a logo. But this, was introducing new elements to just make a visual identity much richer, more meaningful, more relevant. What were the reactions like after launch? Were there some things where people were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that? Or were most of the reactions like, pumping fists and Skittles and rainbows?
I think generally it was really positive. We had loads of lovely messages and loads of support. I think the things that came through were people kind of asking about all the different elements that went into making it. Like how did you get LG to do so many different things and make so many different assets and build something which is not necessarily super conventional. It's a bit mad, and that's kind of the charm of it. So I definitely take that as a positive. It's not trying to be, a perfect bit of Swiss design. It's designed to be super expressive, be full of character, be full of personality. And I think that's what came through. So really, really pleased with the reaction. Love that, people want to see big brands out there that do have a bit of personality and don't feel like they're kind of taking themselves too seriously.
I love that.
Yeah, I know what you mean with the question. It's like people love to hate a rebrand. It's so fun and easy to do so. But I suppose with this one, it hadn't been touched for such a long time. And there was, it was one of those where it's like, I think everyone was keen to see some charm and life breathe back into it. So it wasn't like, oh, they've just been through a rebrand, or what have you done, or what are you changing? I do think Tom's right though. Like, we have had questions like from clients or, from friends where it's like when you put the case study out there, they do raise an eyebrow and suspiciously kind of ask, do they really use all those assets, or is that all real stuff versus like, have you just mocked it up for the case study? And it's like, no, this is a company that has so many products, markets, different things they really want to use, where honestly that this is a really rich design system because they're absolutely desperate for the breadth, richness, number of products they need to showcase. There's so many uses for all these things that it is genuinely rich for a reason.
I think that's always the hope and the worry is we've done all this great stuff. Gosh, I hope they put it to use.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they have. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I think we're lucky because of that. This does really feel like it was a unique opportunity, unique brand. Really amazing client relationship, and it's not always the case. Normally you have to, work so hard to drive change or get people to do stuff. But actually, this was so natural, and this felt like a really good kind of meeting of minds and ambition, and that we did this really together with a client, and that's where we feel super lucky to be involved. And I think maybe lots of designers probably would have loved this brief because you have so many great elements to start with. So yeah, we're pleased we got it, and also pleased with what we were able to do with it.
Yeah. Sounds like excitement from day one, and more confidence and optimism than skepticism, which is always nice. What do you think every project has its moment where like, this is, we're struggling, or this is really hard. What do you think? Was there like a hardest part about the project? Was there any phase in particular where there was a little bit of tension or challenge where you did have to work through?
I mentioned before about this kind of getting released in different waves. I think it's very natural for designers to feel like everything's got to be absolutely perfect before it gets released. You've got to have the case study good to go. And maybe that was a challenge, but also one of the things was really exciting that we had to kind of release a MVP version of the brand out into the world, maybe before, we'd worked through every single part of it or built the entire system. But that's also part of the magic, that it continued to build and build and build. And it wasn't just a case of, right, we finished it, here's the guidelines, see you later. It was really a partnership, and it was, we know that you want to launch this at your big tech event, let's do that. And then let's continue to build and build and build. Probably the biggest challenge in having to release something so quickly, but then keep developing it without necessarily knowing what all the answers were at that time. Yeah,
I think the client has to have a lot of trust in the process and trust in you all, because they also weren't some LG folks sharing the internal the pitch deck, or not the pitch deck, but weren't LG folks sharing some elements like maybe too soon. You're like, oh wait.
Yeah, they're like really wanting to share it around their business internally to get the excitement going, which is fantastic for us. And then you just like kind of running to keep up and making sure that everyone gets this is all intention rather than delivery. So yeah, just making sure that everyone had the guidance to use everything well, and to understand what's live, what's in development, what's coming, all that sort of thing. Like making sure that the acceleration and the speed isn't to anyone's detriment.
Yeah, I love that idea of intention over delivery. that clarifies a lot.
I tell you what was very annoying was LG's employees have an incredibly good English, like really, it always amazes me. And I think sometimes we meet LG colleagues where they say, oh, I'm, sorry, my English isn't very good, I'm very self-conscious. And you're like, imagine me saying that in Korean. But translation tools like Google Translate are still surprisingly very poor. So when it comes to written documents where they're trying to share lots of information, like PowerPoint documents, that kind of thing, you need them to take you through it word for word. Because if you rely on Google Translate, you're like, what are they saying here? And I see it in social media as well. When you translate, Korean posts from celebrities or from bands or whatever, you really struggle to get the gist of it because the technology can't translate at speed. So you do have to, when you're doing things like script writing, speech writing, things like that, it is still like a very intensive face-to-face discussion process. You can't rely on the technology yet for that.
That's such a good point. And we see that in our everyday lives, like if we're hitting translate on Instagram, it's like, I don't think they meant to say that at all.
No.
Yeah, it's the idioms. It's the cultural phrases that get translated one for one. And you're like, wait, why did they say that the worm was cut in half? And you're like, I don't understand that. And you're like, oh, that means like good news or something,
I want to find that post, the worm's cut in half. Let me see what you're looking at.
I don't know why that came to mind. That was a weird example.
You're channeling like one of the kiddos, I think. I love it. Now, just a couple more questions, and then Kelly, if there's any, and all of you, if there's anything that we haven't asked, we'll certainly give an opportunity in the last couple minutes that you might want to add if there's something that we haven't asked directly. But 2 quick questions. What are some of the key takeaways and lessons? Like, what's the big takeaway or lesson that you might have from this project? They're always learning opportunities. So, what was the big lesson?
2 from me, maybe. One is, sometimes the answer's hiding in plain sight, and it's not about throwing everything out. It's about bringing it to life. What was the other one? Another lesson is the power of a philosophy, rather than a visual idea and a verbal idea or, propositions, USPs, all that kind of thing. The power of a philosophy to actually guide people and give them the tools and the platform to go and do their work, rather than, just an idea that we rationalize things with. I think could be very, very powerful.
I think for me, it was, really simple and just trust your gut. I think if there's the idea there, don't feel like you have to follow the same process that you would normally on every single project. I think people kind of resonate when you present something that you really believe in and you've put so much thought in. And that's why, doing that single idea was, I think really, really powerful. And so always kind of trusting your gut, going with that. This is the case on every project, but I think particularly on this, just building the right team for the project and building that team spirit is so important. I mentioned at the start, we call ourselves Team Life's Good. That includes the client as well. And I think I've always really believed in people do the best work when they've got a smile on their face. And not saying this whole project has been easy, it definitely hasn't, but I think we've had an incredible team full of kind of enthusiasm and ambition to want to create something amazing. And that's kind of what's really driven the work. It's the people behind the work that's made it amazing, as well as all the people we've collaborated with. So I think the list of collaborators is like over 10 different agencies or people. And we're lucky that we're able to call on some of those, real specialists and experts. And that's what I think really leads to great work, when you have people that can create stuff you can't do yourself. So those partnerships, those are the things that made it really special.
Amazing. I love that the LG team is part of your team and vice versa.
Yeah, so we made these little badges, actually, little Life's Good badges that whenever anybody joins Team Life's Good, you get a little badge. So you're part of the team and, celebrate the ethos that we've built right from the start.
I love it. It's flair.
Fun. It is. Yeah. Client flair.
Both mine be miserable.
You've got to do a team. You got to do a Life's Good dance as well, though. That was actually I'd forgotten about that. That was one of the ideas.
We need to see it.
As part of the. Go on, Blake. Sorry.
This will be the part of the video that we share. So go ahead and show us the dance.
Honestly, I'm the world's worst dancer, but for the idea of creating Life's Good Day, one part of it was that we should create a Life's Good dance, and we all did a dance move based on a different LG product. So I think David did the LG microwave
again. Did the microwave, yeah.
Microwave.
Yeah.
Forgot what I did.
Did like the tumble dryer, didn't they? Yeah. Yeah.
But that's part of the fun, that was never in the brief, and that was never part of the project at the start was, design a dance move. And those things I think what made this film super fun.
Now we have to ask, did the CEO embrace a dance?
No, I don't think he did a dance. I think a lot of the LG employees like us like a bit of karaoke, and thankfully that was never I don't think any of my karaoke was captured on film, so you won't be able to use that for social media purposes.
Not that you know of.
yeah. I think Tom might have some secretly on his phone, so
he's just waiting for the release date. Right?
Yeah, let's see if it strikes me.
Now, what do you hope the future holds for LG and its brand, this brand that you've built together?
I think one of the things I'm most pleased on this is that it's not a classic case of here's the guidelines, see you later. We literally had a meeting with LG this morning. We continue to work with them. This year will be coming up to 2 years where we've been working. And I think that's the sign that the partnership is so strong. We want to help them succeed. We want to help the brand continue to grow. So it's just set and forget, because they'll probably need a rebrand in 4 or 5 years' time. It's actually thinking about this more as a brand that's living, that you continue to update, you continue to evolve, you refine, make sure it works as best as it possibly can. So yeah, I'm excited about all the new things we're doing and all the things that are going to take it to the next level. So hopefully we'll have some more things to share later this year as well.
Yeah, and if you think about this idea of emotional intelligence, like there's so many things that are coming up that, you know, LG wants to answer and provide an alternative for, like what's their version of artificial intelligence? What's their way of keeping you entertained on long, boring commutes? What's their way of providing like B2B services that have a bit of personality and don't feel corporate? There's so many interesting questions in the world of technology where, you know, it can be dry, it can be dull and grey, and bringing a bit of emotion and personality and the feeling of kind of a life well lived to it is, has huge potential.
Love it. I love looking at all the work on the Wolff Olins website. It's incredible what all you've accomplished. It's a great case study. I also like the Daniel
other people
Rinda.
Work at Wolff Olins. It's not just me and Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh.
You didn't do all of it? Wow, you two got a lot done.
Yeah. Mostly Tom.
Well, I was laughing and seeing Daniel in like modeling some of the merch, because we did an episode on Instacart, and I met Daniel, and lovely guy, and so it was funny. I was smiling when I saw him debuting his modeling career.
Well, it's an amazing brand. We can't wait to see what it does over the next several years and how it continues to grow and evolve. Any of you have any thoughts or comments that you wanted to make sure we heard? Anything we didn't ask?
I think I'd just reiterate that me and David are super lucky to be here today and, you know, speak on behalf of the team. That the team is huge, and there's been so many people that have, you know, stepped up when they needed to, and this has been like such an amazing effort from so many different people that is what I think has brought so much character to it. Even really simple things like when we're doing the case study, we were saying, it's got to have a life's good element, and we need to have a dog on the skateboard. And everyone's like, oh my God, we've got to find a dog to go on the skateboard in South Korea. Are you serious? And, you know, people made it happen. They went there, they found the dog, they got the skateboard made. And I think it's just that kind of that energy and that enthusiasm to always, you know, say like, yes, we can do it. Let's make it happen. This is mad, but we believe in it and we want to do it. So yeah, huge shout out to the team that's behind the work. They're really amazing, and super proud of Team Life's Good.
Very inspiring.
And they found a cat too, not just a dog.
We needed to have options. That's the only time we did 2 routes. It was like concept 1, dog, concept 2, cat.
You can't want to be both.
It's a polarizing topic, you know. Yeah, you didn't want to just go all in on the dog, because then the cat people are going to be like, "What? No, you know, cats are easier." And so I get it.
Wonderful. Well, we really enjoyed it, and should we close with a microwave? Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
I learned a new hand gesture.
When I was about 7. Wow. Still doing it now.